Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to do the smallest common multiple algorithm. We want to find the smallest common multiple of the provided parameter that can be evenly divided by both, as well as by all the sequential numbers in the range between these parameters. The range will be an array of two numbers that will not necessarily be in numerical order. For example, if given 1 and 3, find the smallest common multiple of both 1 and 3. That is also evenly divisible by all the numbers between 1 and 3. The answer here would be 6, because 6 divided by 1 is 0, or it has no remainders, it's evenly divisible. 6 divided by 2 is evenly divisible. 6 divided by 3 is evenly divisible, and 6 divided by 3 is evenly divisible. So we want to use read, search, ask. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do on this one is find the lower and the higher number, right? Because on this one, the higher number is first, and on this one, the higher number is second. And so we could do a conditional statement. If array at position 0 is greater than array at position 1, then we want to set a lower number equal to array at position 1, and then a higher number at array at position 0. Else, we want to do the same thing, but then just switch them. Instead of being like that, we're going to be like that. Now, it's important that we initialize these variables before we do this. So we'll go the lower number, and then we can also do higher number. And so this way we've got them coming out. So let's console log the lower number and make sure it's working. So here we want this to be 1, and then if it's higher number, and we can see it is 1 right now, right here. And then if it's higher number, this should be 5 for our example here. Cool. Okay, so now we know which number's the lower number and which number is the higher number. And if they're equal, they should never be equal, but at least this handles that situation. So our function won't break if they were equal. Let's see here. So what's the next thing? We need to be able to we need to be able to calculate the multiple, right? So with this 1 and 5, we're going to start with 1 and 5, and we'll get 5. And then we'll be able to check to see if that works in the range. And if it doesn't work, then we'll multiply the smaller number first, so 2, and then multiply 2 times 5, and that'll give us 10. Because that won't work either, then we'll go 3 times 5, which will give us 15, and then 4 times 5, which will give us 20, and then we'll keep calculating that. We'll keep iterating up using the smaller number until we get to a upper range, right? And we can always multiply that. So even if we get to 1 is 10 times 5 and it's 50, we'll still want to multiply 1, or we'll want to multiply 11 times 5 next, and then 12 times 5. Because that will make it so that the multiples stay consistent. Okay, so let's see here. So to do that, we can just make a variable called the multiple, and we'll set this equal to 1. Why do we not want to set it to 0? Because if it's 0, we'll be getting really, really low numbers, and that's not going to work. We want to multiply 1 times 1, not 1 times 0. So, and then we want to say, while the multiple, for now I'm just going to say the multiple is less than 1,000. Just to get started, because we don't want an infinite loop. And then I'm going to go multiple plus equals 1. And so now if we were to console.log this, what we've got is a loop, and we're iterating through. And we know we want to go 1 times 1 times 5, and then 1 times 2 times 5, and 1 times 3 times 5, right? So we want to be like the lower number times the multiple. because our lower number is 1 in this example, we're going up that way. If it were 2, it'd be 2, 4, 6, 8, right? So we're multiplying the lower number times the multiple, and then we want to get our upper bound. So the first one, we want to be 1 times 1 times 5 is 5. And then we want to have 1 times 2 times 5, so that's 10. So right now we're not getting that. We want to do that. So let's put this guy in parentheses. So this calculates first, and then we're going to want to go the higher number. Cool. So now we're iterating up based on the multiples of 5. 1 times 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 10. Or 1 times 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 3 times 5 is 15. 1 times 4 times 5 is 20. So now we're getting this higher multiple. So as we iterate up through these numbers, we're going to be getting all the multiples of this. And so what we need to do now is check it against the range, right? We're trying to say are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all evenly divisible? So here they're not, here they're not, here they're not, because 2 wouldn't work here. Here they're not because 4 wouldn't work here. Here they're not because 2 wouldn't work here. And so now what we're going to do is just create a for loop which checks each number in the range. So what we need to do really is find the range of the numbers. So we need an array that looks like this. Oh yeah. And we need to generate this programmatically, right? And so let's have a function called, let's say we're going to let the range equal to getRange. And getRange is just a function that we're going to come up with. And then we're going to pass in the lower number and the higher number. And then for now, I'm going to get rid of that console log. So right now, getRange is not defined. So let's define it outside of the function. So we can go function getRange, and then low n and high n. Okay, cool. And now we could say console.log getRange. Cool. So now what we're doing is we're passing this in, and it's returning getRange. So what we want to do is say we'll make a variable equal to the result range is equal to an empty array, and we'll create a for loop for let I equal low n, and I is less than or equal to high n, and I plus equal 1. And this will give us, if we were to console log this, we're just counting up to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what we want to do is push the I into the result range. And then we want to return the result range. Okay, so this function here is generating a range. If we were to console log the result range at the end, we should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. So this is the range of multiples that we want to check. We're returning it here. So now in this function, range will be properly set, right? Cool. So here we've got the range. And so now we've got the range, and the range is accessible within this function. And so now we could write a for loop and just say, yeah, like right now, we're working up through here. And so what we can do is say, we've got our range, and then we've also got a higher, oh yeah, let's set this equal to a variable. So let's say let higher common multiple is equal to that. Yeah, and if we, unexpected thing. Oh, we just want to get rid of this guy. Okay, cool. And now if we console.log, we can do the higher common multiple, and we can do range. And now this is what we're working with, right? Higher common multiple, lower number times multiple is 1. Okay, so 5. And then we can iterate through this here and say, is 5 evenly divisible by 1? Yes. Is it evenly divisible by 2? No. Okay, we're going to skip. The first time I'm writing this, I'm going to do it in a really brute force sort of way so that you can, just because I think it's easier to understand for really early stage programmers. There's much more efficient ways to do this, but we're going to do it this way for now. Okay, so what we can do is iterate through each of these range points, right? So we could do another for loop for here. So we could say let I equals 0, I is less than range dot length, and I plus equals 1. And then range at position I. If we were to console log this, the word let. Reserved word let. Huh. Oh, this should be 4. Cool. So now what we're doing is iterating up through each one. So we're saying 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And so what we want to do is return if this, if it's evenly divisible all the way through by all these, then we want to do that. Now, this is actually a bit tricky because what we want to do is make sure that it returns true each time. So let's create a variable here. So if we're able to iterate through 1, 2, like the length of the range, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we render true, it's evenly divisible all those times. We want to have a count that says if 5 is equal to the range.length, then we know it's evenly divisible throughout the whole range, and we can return that answer. So let's have a let's let a true count equals 0 outside of this loop, and then within it we're going to say console.log true count. But we don't want it to be a true count just because it's in here. Oh, we want to no, we want a true count. We want to add it up. We want to add 1 to it. So like 1 is evenly divisible by 5, so we would render a true count. Oh, so we should make that conditional statement as well, right? Like if what's the what are we trying to, oh, the higher common multiple, which in the first example it's 5, divided by the position range at position I, right? So it'd be like 1 and then 2 and then 3. If that's equal to 0, then we want to add up the true count. Cool. Let's see, I'm going to try to clean some of this up, but we'll do here, range true count. And I'm going to get rid of this. We already know where the range is. And what happens if I get rid of this? Okay, so right now we're just returning the array. Cool. Where's the console log? Okay, we can get rid of this console log for now. Nice, now we're not getting anything. So now we're doing the higher common multiple, the range, and then let's get the true count. Okay, so, and I'm going to lower this down. Instead of doing 5, let's do 3. Because 1 to 3 should give us 6, which is kind of easier to think about. So our first multiple is 3. Let's go, yeah. I'm going to put this here so it's easier to see. Okay, so 3, and then we're going to check. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to say this is a true count. This just makes it easier to view. Okay, so the first one, 3, and then we're going through. 1 is evenly divisible by 3, so we add to our true count. 2 is not, so we don't add, the true count doesn't get added right here. and then 3 it is, so we add true count. But oh, and then we should say range.length. Okay. Again, I'm just making this so it's easier to read. Range length. Okay, so range length is 3 and 2 and 3. Okay, so here it doesn't count, and so because 2 is less, we want to return the variable if this true count is equal to the range length. So it doesn't work for here. So here we wouldn't return the resulting variable. Whereas in the second one, 6 is easily divisible by 1, 2, and 3. So the true count, see the true count starts again at 0 here. So then we iterate it once, and then again, and then a third time, which means we found our answer, which means 6 is our answer. So what we want to say is if the true count is equal to range.length, then we want to return our higher common multiple. So now we can get rid of this console log and scroll down to here, and let's let the result equal the smallest one, and then we can console.log our result. And we still have this guy. I'm going to comment this out as well. Higher common multiple is not defined. The higher common multiple. Oh, I don't want to. That's not. That needs to be. Here's the console log I need to hide. Okay, so it's working with this one, and so 1 to 5 gets us 60. That's right. 2 to 10 gets us 2520. Okay, cool. 1 to 13 gets us an array. Okay, so why is this happening? Okay, so I put a temporary like constraint on this so that it would only iterate up to 1,000 times, right? And so we want to make it so that it keeps going, because right now on our example of 1 to 13, it stops before it gets to 360,360. But if I were to add maybe 2 or 3 more zeros to this, it's going to keep iterating up. And then we get our answer, 36036. Okay, cool. And then what about with 23 and 18? Look at that. Potential influence detected on line 14. Test may fail if not changed. Huh. Okay. That's not actually a test situation though. 18, cool. So this one returns 6,056,820. So this is actually probably the right answer. This would pass the tests. Okay, there's a lot of ways to do that. This is what I would call brute force way of doing it. If you think about what's happening programmatically here, right? Like, even though we're adding this true count up, so each time we get iterate up for another higher multiple, we're checking throughout the whole range. So if the range was really big, we're still checking that even though we knew it was false far too early, because our true count, we don't really actually want to add up our true count and then compare it against how many times it was true. If it was ever false, we would want to just break this loop. And there's ways to do that programmatically that are much more, they're faster programmatically, and then they're also easier to write. But from the standpoint of writing these algorithms for the first time, I try to make it like, this to me makes a little bit more sense. And but you can check out these guys, like if you go to the hints, you can read these bits of code and they'll show you other ways to do it. So instead of, like for example, this here is a big chunk of code that could be easier, could be written much more cleanly. Because you could say, let the lower number, and you could let the higher number, and you can set these by using arrays, right? So you can get that, and then you go math.min. And then here math dot min of the, and then this needs to be max. Maybe it's just dot 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 array. Yeah, okay, cool. So this is a more succinct way of getting your lower and higher bounds, right? Let's see, what would be another thing? Here we could use a, for down here we could use a for each loop, right? Oh, no, actually this is a good way to do this one. But here we could use a for each loop. So, or also here we could use a higher order function like every. If every one returns true, then we return the higher common multiple. But if not, then we don't do that. And so every would be a good use case here. And so yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. There's also interesting, this one basically does the same thing. It does a loop through each part of the array, but it does it using a do while loop, which makes sense. This is a good way to do it as well. And then even I like this solution a lot. This is just tricky in the way that it iterates, so it checks each time. And yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to do this. This way that I've done it here is probably one of the most brute force ways of doing it. It's probably not the cleanest, but I think that I show you it this way so that you get an idea for how to do it in a brute force way. And then if you want to play with the higher order functions, like using every, or maybe map would be a good one, then you could use those in order to find a more elegant solution. But I think that this is a good way to get started. And yeah, hope this helps. The tests pass, and so thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.